Japan is quietly talking with the Philippines about a possible export of the Type 03 Chu SAM medium-range surface-to-air missile system, as Tokyo moves to scrap strict limits that have kept lethal weapons off its export list. If the deal goes ahead after a rules overhaul, it would mark a sharp step in Japan's shift toward becoming a security provider in the Indo-Pacific, and strengthen the Philippine air defense facing China in the South and West Philippine Seas. Japan weighing missile export to Philippines, a move that could test its strained ties with China. The potential move will likely draw criticism from China, which is locked in a diplomatic row with Japan over Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan in early November. China is strongly opposing Japan's potential export of its Type 03 surface-to-air missiles to the Philippines, calling the move extremely dangerous and a threat to regional stability. As Japan seeks to bolster Philippine defense amid rising South China Sea tensions with China, a move that signals Japan's gradual easing of its post-war defense export restrictions and deepens security ties with Manila. Beijing has condemned this, viewing it as provocative and escalating regional tensions, especially as Japan also plans missile deployments on Yonaguni, an island close to Taiwan. As Tokyo and Manila are holding informal talks on a potential transfer of the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force's Type 03 Chu SAM air defense system to the Philippines, in a move that would test the next stage of Japan's loosening arms export rules. The discussions are unfolding as Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's government prepares to abolish the long-standing 5 categories restriction that has confined Japan's defense exports to functions such as rescue, transport, and surveillance, and as both countries deepen security cooperation to counter mounting pressure from China in the South China Sea. Developed in the 1990s by Mitsubishi Electric to replace the aging MIM-23 Hawk, the Type 03 system is a truck-mounted medium-range surface-to-air missile, fully road-mobile and deployed by the Japanese ground forces. Each launcher generally carries 6 missiles, and open sources attribute to it an engagement range of around 50 kilometers, with interceptions up to roughly 10 kilometers in altitude and speeds of about Mach 2.5. The missile uses a solid propellant rocket motor and a high-explosive fragmentation warhead designed to defeat fast-moving aircraft and cruise missiles. Each fire unit is linked to an active electronically scanned array radar mounted on its own 8x8 truck, capable, according to public data, of tracking around 100 airborne targets and engaging about a dozen at the same time. Chu SAM combines inertial navigation in the initial phase, course updates via radio links, and an active radar seeker in the terminal phase, which allows engagements in poor weather and in cluttered or jammed environments. Within Japan's air and missile defense architecture, the system occupies the intermediate layer between short-range means such as TAN SAM, which provide close-in protection, and long-range Patriot Advanced Capability 3 interceptors that cover critical bases and large urban areas. For Manila, a future Chu SAM acquisition would form part of a gradual shift from a posture centered on internal security towards territorial defense. The armed forces of the Philippines have only recently begun to acquire modern ground-based air defense systems and anti-ship missiles intended to protect airfields, ports, and energy infrastructure exposed to pressure in the West Philippine Sea. A battery supplied by Japan would add a medium-range layer over Luzon and selected coastal bases, provided that the missiles and radar are interfaced with existing air surveillance sensors and with allied information flows from the United States and other partners. The roughly 50-kilometer engagement envelope and the multi-target capability would, in theory, allow a limited number of batteries to cover key approach axes, while road mobility complicates adversary strike planning.
The politico-military relationship between Tokyo and Manila is already evolving in this direction. The Reciprocal Access Agreement,
signed in 2024 and entering into force in 2025, now allows the forces of both countries to deploy on each other's territory, leading to ground and naval exercises conducted on Philippine soil. At the same time, Tokyo is testing the limits of its revised export rules by agreeing to supply the United States with Patriot interceptors manufactured in Japan, as part of a relaxation of restrictions that would have been unlikely under the earlier regime. A Chu SAM transfer would therefore not be an isolated step, but another episode in a broader process in which Japan's legal constraints are adjusted to reflect the country's alliance commitments and its intention to sustain a national defense industrial and technological base. If the informal discussions on the Type 03 Chu SAM result, after a revision of the guidelines, in a concrete contract, the export will mark a further stage in Japan's evolution into a security provider for the Indo-Pacific, rather than only an inward-looking buyer. For regional security, a Japanese-made medium-range ground-based air defense capability deployed in the Philippines would add to the emerging network of allied and partner systems stretching from the East China Sea to the South China Sea. Such a development would almost certainly trigger protests from Beijing, which already criticizes new missile deployments on Japan's southwestern islands. Still, it would also indicate to Washington that Tokyo is now prepared not only to reinforce its own air and missile defense, but also to contribute to strengthening the posture of frontline partners exposed to pressure along China's maritime periphery. Aside from the Japanese Type 03 Chu SAM medium-range surface-to-air missile system, Manila also files several mid-range missiles from its allied nations. India supplies Manila with BrahMos supersonic anti-ship missile, while the United States amassed the Philippines with modern American missile system, capable of countering Chinese naval fleets and even reaching Chinese military bases. As tension runs high in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, the Philippines is ramping up to enhance its defense and monitoring system by land, seas, and the horizon. To prepare Manila to defend its territories amid geopolitical tension over the West Philippines Sea and possible spillover of war in Taiwan, the AFP, through its modernization program, with the support of allies, obtained the much-needed defense system. The Philippine Marine Corps unveiled its first BrahMos supersonic anti-ship missile battery and future plans to enhance coastal defense earlier this month. A milestone in Manila's effort to develop a long-range precision fires capability. Establishing its first BrahMos missile base in northern Luzon, specifically at the naval station Leovigildo Antioqui, the site, facing the South China Sea, strategically positioned to cover the disputed Scarborough Shoal. This is part of a 2022 deal with India for 3 BrahMos missile batteries, designed to enhance the Philippine Marine Corps' coastal defense capabilities, particularly against threats in the South China Sea. The first missile battery was showcased in a video presented during the Philippine Marine Corps' 75th anniversary ceremony, highlighting the force's progress in coastal defense and modernization. With a striking range of up to 290 kilometers, the first Philippine BrahMos battery is based in western Luzon and is operated by the Marines' Coastal Defense Regiment's shore-based anti-ship missile battalion. From its staging in Zambales, Manila now has the ability to hold adversaries at threat, including Chinese vessels at Scarborough Shoal. The disputed South China Sea shoal has seen an uptick in incidents between Manila and Beijing since August. Philippine leadership have rebuked a recent proclamation from China that has staked Scarborough as a national nature reserve, which officials believe will increase Beijing's foothold in the area.
3 batteries of the Indian supersonic anti-ship missiles were procured in 2022 in a $375 million deal between Manila and New Delhi.
The Philippines sought an affordable area denial solution to equip its outdated forces, while India secured the first export of the domestically produced missile. According to the Coastal Defense Regiment and released media, each Philippine Marine Corps BrahMos battery will come equipped with 2 mobile autonomous launchers, 1 radar vehicle, a missile reloader, and command and control truck. Each launcher wielded 2 BrahMos, while the reloading carrier was seen with an additional 4 missiles. The official launch, on November 7, 2025, of the first operational BrahMos system at Zambales transforms planning into a tangible capability. With a reported range of approximately 290 kilometers and the ability to hold Scarborough Shoal at nearly 200 kilometers, the Philippine Navy possesses, for the first time, a mobile coastal interdiction capability anchored to the island of Luzon. Beyond the announcement itself, the stakes are operational and political. To reconfigure the maneuver space around Subic and the approaches surrounding Manila without crossing a threshold of escalation. In this context, the desired effect is targeted deterrence, designed to increase the cost of any coercive action at sea while leaving room for diplomatic maneuvering vis-à-vis Beijing. After purchasing the BrahMos missile from India, the Philippines has deployed it facing China. The Philippines, a mutual defense treaty ally of the United States, received the American missile system capable of sinking warships which remain in the country's northernmost province of Batanes, a choke point of China's ambition to its maritime domain expansion, both in the South China Sea and Taiwan. The Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, or Nemesis, a ground-based launcher equipped with 2 missiles designed to target enemy ships, will remain in the Philippines for unknown period of time. The American missiles, known as a killer ship, is part of the U.S. Marine Corps' maritime strategy in the Pacific, where China is expanding its naval presence. The Nemesis became the second U.S. missile system stationed in the Philippines, following joint military exercises. A U.S. Army mid-range capability, the Typhoon missile system has remained in the Southeast Asian country indefinitely, after participating in a drill in 2024. Meanwhile, the U.S. deployed a mid-range capability missile launcher system in northern Philippines, which can fire various missiles, including the SM-6 supersonic missile, with a range of about 450 kilometers, and the Tomahawk cruise missile, with a maximum range of 2,500 kilometers. These missile systems are the newest addition to the Philippines Armed Forces defense assets, aside from the surface-to-air Python and Derby, or Spider, system, integrated into the Philippine Air Force arsenal in previous years. Developed by Israel's Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, the Spider MR is designed to counter a variety of aerial threats, with its Python 5 and Derby missiles. These world-class defense systems, through their mobility and advanced detection technologies, make them a formidable component of the Philippines' defense strategy. The deployment of these ground-based missiles into the Pacific is a significant development if a Chinese amphibious fleet would effectively anchor off a landing area in Taiwan and station in the South China Sea. Its location would be known, and these maritime strike Tomahawks and BrahMos could go to work, target the fleet, and sink part of it. Manila is considered a critical player in the defense of Taiwan due to its geographical proximity across the Luzon Strait and the Bashi Channel, strategic maritime choke points that China could use in the event of an invasion. Earlier this year, the Philippine military chief warned that the country would inevitably be drawn into a conflict over Taiwan if one were to erupt. China has fully militarized at least 3 of several islands it built in the South China Sea, which it mostly claims in full, despite a 2016 arbitral ruling that backed the Philippines, arming them with anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles, the U.S. has said.
China says its military facilities in the Spratly Islands are purely defensive and that it can do what it likes on its territory. As such, the Philippines, with the support of the United States, could say the same thing, that Manila is just strengthening its defensive posture, and it can do what it likes on its own territory. The Philippines is strategically positioned east of the South China Sea, a thoroughfare for roughly 30% of global maritime trade. An estimated $4 trillion worth of global trade passes through the South China Sea annually, which accounts for a third of the global maritime trade. The Philippines archipelago is also a major part of the first island chain, which refers to the first chain of major Pacific archipelagos out from the East Asian continental mainland coast. Currently, the first island chain is the most effective point to counter any Chinese invasion and expanding influence. Since the threats to Japan, the Philippines, and other like-minded countries are principally maritime, even in geography, Japan being an archipelagic nation like the Philippines, and in the aerial domain, it is reasonable, since there is no land border involved, to treat the area as one theater. Japan plans to deepen partnerships by viewing Japan, the United States, Australia, the Philippines, South Korea, and others as a single theater. This would mean that Japan, the US, and like-minded countries such as the Philippines would be called on to strengthen defense cooperation to prepare for emergencies in this theater. Japan and the Philippines have both been embroiled in tensions with China over disputed features in their respective seas. Japan lodged a protest against China in June for erecting a new structure in a natural gas field in the East China Sea. Relations between the countries have also been strained due to tensions over the Diaoyu Islands, also known as the Senkaku Islands in Japan. Meanwhile, Manila and Beijing have figured in intensifying clashes over disputed shoals and atolls in the West Philippine Sea, the Philippines' term for its exclusive economic zone within the South China Sea. Philippines and Japan's Joint Operations Command, a new unit under its self-defense force, was operationalizing the single theater concept. Japan's foreign assistance to the Philippines as it support the regional security in Indo-Pacific. Amid growing Chinese threats in the region, Tokyo is helping the Philippines to bolster its maritime law enforcement capabilities. Japan's national security strategy describes China's actions in the West Philippine Sea as attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force. Moreover, Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific vision identifies the protection of free oceans and support for strengthening maritime law enforcement capabilities as two of its pillars. Reflecting Tokyo's concern over the escalation of Sino-Philippine tensions in the region, and to support Manila's efforts to improve the PCG's maritime law enforcement capabilities, Tokyo has provided patrol vessels via an ODA loan through the Japan International Cooperation Agency. Based on these critical interests, Japan is likely to expand the scope of its engagement in the South China Sea further, using its cooperation with the Philippines as a possible incubator for other assistance projects elsewhere in the region.